One of the last sections is requirements, and this is mercifully a very short section. We're going to do two things. First of all, talk about user stories, and finally hardware and software. So user stories are features. Okay, I'm starting to dip into agile terminology. You don't have to. You can just simply call them features. The reason I do that is because following agile is an easy way of making sure that you meet the modularity, make sure you do iterative development, you're getting that feedback, and you're doing evaluations and review. Effectively, the coursework is kind of using agile, but it doesn't actually say the word. Okay, so I've dropped into user story mode just to kind of help explain things. So you're going to say essentially what are the features you're going to implement and priority. And I'll explain priority in a moment. Hardware and software, what software you're going to need, the libraries, for example, that you're going to be using, what hardware is going to be required, with each of those justified. So, user story is really simple. This is just a table as a summary list. It just makes it really easy. Then you're going to have priorities, a list of priorities, saying is it high priority, must be in there, low priority, that this doesn't have to be implemented as much, along with a story score. Now this story score is not necessary for the coursework, but it's useful for you. What a story score basically says is how much time do you think, roughly as an estimate, is it going to implement. So it's not an actual number of days, this is just kind of like a relative score. So compared to the others, how much more time do you think it's going to take? So maybe you can give it a score out of 100, 100 being this is going to take the longest, 10 being this is going to take the shortest, and you can give some time some numbers in between. This will just help you when picking the features and user stories you're going to implement at each prototype. So if you've got a high priority one that's going to take a long time, then maybe that's going to be a whole prototype on its own. If you've got a bunch of high priority which are smaller, you can maybe do 2 or 3 of those. Okay, it's just going to help you kind of work out which ones to do first and in which order. And then when it comes to implementation, you've got an easy, simple justification to use. So it's not necessary, but it's useful. So hardware requirements. This is, I'm afraid to say, just an annoying section. You just have to write down what hardware you need. Do you need any additional hardware? So do you need any kind of USB devices plugged in? Do you need a scanner? Do you need digital cameras? Whatever. And what are your basic core requirements? CPU, memory, and storage requirements. You have to quantify these. You can't simply say, I need a computer, which is obviously what you probably want to say. And you can't just make it up. You have to actually give values which are realistic and necessary. Are then display requirements, and is anything specific on that one? So when deciding on requirements, you should look at the minimum specifications needed for the libraries you're using. Okay, so if you've got some specific libraries, hopefully they will say what it's going to be running on. If it doesn't, well, think about what can it run on. A lot of these libraries for Python specifically will run on a Raspberry Pi. Therefore, Raspberry Pi can be taken as a minimum requirement. That's just a little simple tip for you. Think about the time complexity of your algorithm. So if you've got an exponential algorithm in your program, then you're probably going to need a high CPU speed, okay, because it is going to slow down very dramatically when you get larger sets of data. If you've got time complexity is linear, then you probably don't need a really fast CPU. Each one does need a little justification, so you have to have a thought process behind numbers. Why have you said that number? So just a tip, justifications here are easier sometimes when the prototype has been completed. So as an example, let's say you're not sure how much memory it will use up, so maybe run the program, go to Task Manager, have a look. If you're not sure about the storage requirements, then maybe go to where you stored the file on your hard drive, see how big it is. It's not likely you're going to need much storage. It's not likely you're going to need much memory. So as a kind of rule of thumb, the Raspberry Pi justification will be fine. So if you can run on a Raspberry Pi, there's your minimum requirements. Software requirements, this one's a lot more straightforward. What libraries are you using? Okay, so what libraries you're using, and obviously if you're using Python, say you're using Python, what version of Python you are using, because you'll be using a specific version based on the libraries that you've chosen. If you're using .NET, obviously you need to install a .NET framework, etc, etc, etc. So really simple write-up for this one. A table of user stories with feature, priority, story score. Now, I have written justification here, but you probably don't need to put it into the table because you've done the justifications earlier. If you haven't done justifications earlier, then they probably have to come in here. But you can probably leave that part out. And hardware, software requirements, hardware quantified, both justified.